Well, good afternoon from Cottage Farmstead. While it looks like fall out here, especially when you see some of the color and the trees behind me there, it is unseasonably warm today, and it's been unseasonably warm for our start of November. Typically, we're expecting our first frost around this time of year, but we have not had it yet. It's been on the warmer side. We've been getting some consistent rain the last few days, and while we took out our vegetable garden, our flower garden is looking fantastic. So I thought I'd take you around our flower garden to look at the last flush of beautiful blossoms that we have in here before the hard frost that we're going to have probably in the next couple weeks takes it all away until next year. So after growing all season long, the alyssum has started filling out how I had envisioned it. It's coming in around the rocks and filling in all of the gaps really nicely. That was a great tip that I heard on a podcast about using alyssum in gardens that you're trying to get established to have it look fuller while you're still getting a lot of your perennials in. We planted some more echinacea this year, and while it didn't bloom in the spring, early summer, it is blooming for us in the fall, and you can see it's a favorite of a lot of the butterflies and moths that are out this time of year. Behind it, we have our white rose. I forget the name of this one. Let's see what the tag says. Desdemona. It's a delicate white rose. This one looks beautiful on the plant, but every time I try to cut it and put it in a vase, it falls apart really quickly. Oh, like you can see right there, it's very fragile and delicate, but it's beautiful to look at and smell out here in the garden. So the Galardra was a super impressive flower this year, especially in our climate. It did great here in pretty much red clay soil, some amendments as you can see. It handled the drought and the heat and made these huge plants here that filled in beautifully in the garden, and it's been blooming consistently for like 3 or 4 months now. Even though it's gone to seed and I haven't had a chance to deadhead in a while, it is still beautiful in the garden. I look forward to growing that in future years, and I have a feeling since it did go to seed so much that it's going to self-sow itself all over our garden next year. So when we moved from our old house, we dug up a few of our echinacea to move with us, and this was the lone survivor. And for the most part, it puts out purple cone flowers, but this time of year, it started putting out some pretty orange sunset colored ones that are really beautiful. So I'm curious to see as this self-sows itself again next year, what other colors we might get. The original mix did have a variety of colors, but the one plant that we happened to bring must have been originally one of the purple ones. But as time goes on and we let it continue sowing here, we may have a variety of colors as the genetics start showing themselves. I think in my last garden tour, this area was barren or had some dying snapdragons in it. And all summer I kept talking about how we were going to plant more zinnias there, we were going to plant more flowers, and we never got around to it. But there happened to be some extra transplants from a project that one of the interns at Growing Green Family Farms didn't end up actually planting. So there was some celosia and status and strawflower and zinnias that she had planted in some seed trays and then didn't have a chance to actually plant them out. So we took those here since Growing Green didn't have a need for the flowers anymore, and we planted them in here. And it's been nice to have a pop of color of these very vibrant, bright zinnias to bring into the house as we are entering daylight savings time, and it's getting quite dark on us early. It's nice to have pops of color around the house. And while we're still harvesting off of it, our celosia has seen better days. It has mostly gone to seed. We have saved seed from the colors that we wanted. I wanted to start getting more of the oranges and yellows, as typically when we have it self-sow, we get a lot of the fuchsia color, which is nice, but you don't necessarily need hot colors in all of your bouquets. So saving seed from the lighter, more pastel colors and the oranges and yellows. See what comes back next year, as they did intermix as far as pollination goes. But it's nice to have some of that seed saved, and we're hoping to grow a little bit more of it next year. So as you can see here, I have little baggies on top of my seed heads here for my dahlias. I watched a video about a month and a half ago about saving seed from dahlias to get some genetic diversity. I was trying to do it earlier in the season. The grasshoppers kept eating my flowers. So this time I decided to put little baggies over them as soon as they were pollinated to keep the bugs from eating the seed heads. I'm curious to see if they survived, but I need to probably pick those soon before the frost gets to them and destroys them or gets them kind of mushy. We did that as well with a couple other varieties in the garden that I can show you real quick. Now, obviously this plant has seen better days as well, but we do have several seed heads here that are finishing off developing. So I'm curious to see the genetic diversity that we'll get next year. With dahlias, you can grow them from tubers, which is the most common, and that's the way to clone and make sure you get the exact same variety year after year. But if you want to start breeding new dahlias or have some new creations or new discoveries, you can save the seed from them and plant the seed out next year to see what variety and colors and shapes you'll have next year. So this is another one of the dahlias that we are trying to save seed from. It's a beautiful pink lemonade color. And I have some more of the seed head protection here. Hopefully we'll get some seed off of this. This one was blooming at the same time as my darker dahlia that was over there. So I'll be curious to see what varieties we get if they cross together. And if I find any gems from planting it from seed, I'll be able to collect the tubers and have my own new variety, especially since tubers are so expensive these days from dahlias. It'd be nice to be able to breed some of my own if possible. And speaking of new favorites, you can see with some of my new favorite black-eyed Susans down here. So last year we planted some black-eyed Susans like those right there on either side of the step down from the terrace along the farmhouse, and we let them self-sow. And they are all popped up all over the garden, and they've been beautiful in bouquets and enjoying them out in the garden. What was interesting to see is some of the different variety that came up from the baby plants, from the parent plants. You can see the size of this one is huge. It's the size of my hand, like a sunflower almost. And it also had some other genetics mixed in where it has some color on the petals there. You can see that one starting to bloom with color as well. We even had some funky double-faced mutants that came up from the parent plants. So it's been fun to see the variety that came up. We're gonna let them self-sow themselves again, maybe save a little bit of seed inside just in case the frost gets some of them this year. But really, really love these large flowers from this black-eyed Susan. So the original zinnia patch here, you can see, has seen better days. It's got powdery mildew now, but it did finally take off in the early fall, late summer. I've been enjoying bouquets of these in the house. I love their pastel, rosy, green hinted glow. Green's one of my favorite colors, so I also enjoy it in my flowers. And this year I grew Queen Lime Orange, which was the first time we grew that this year. And that's been really neat to mix with some of the more sunset fall colored hues to have different color bouquets at this time of year. So I've been mixing some of those oranger tones with my black-eyed Susans and some of my red amaranth, making some like sunset colored bouquets. They've been really, really beautiful. I think I have a picture of one that I'll try and insert here so that you can take a look at it. A lot of these have started going to seed, so I'm hoping that they develop enough that I can collect some seed from these. If not, I'll rebuy some more Queen Lime Zinnia seed for next year, as it is one of my favorites. And my orange roses have had a second flush of blossoms, and they have been beautiful to look out the window and see them out here on the bush. But I've also been harvesting them when they're really small like this and putting them in a vase in the kitchen windowsill, and they are beautiful as they start blooming in the house over several days. But it's also nice to just see them outside the window here on the bush. And while not in the flower and herb terrace proper, we did experiment with growing what's called pumpkin on a stick, and you can see it's beautiful. They did get hit by a frost before we had a chance to harvest them, so they're kind of squishy. I'm not sure they're actually gonna dry and be useful as decoration, but they were a fun experiment to try and grow in our garden. And then behind it is a volunteer petunia. It was one single plant that went crazy this summer. It loved having the automatic irrigation here in our row of chard and okra that was planted in that row. And it really took over, but it's really beautiful to see from the house, so we left it. And my beautiful butterfly peas have held on despite having some cooler nights. It still has plenty of blooms coming on it, but it won't be long now before this starts dying back. It is a more tropical plant, and it really loves growing in 80 to 100 degree temperatures, and we are not having any more of those weather days here in November. But it's still nice to see the beautiful blue purple flowers blooming every morning from the kitchen window. Well, I hope you enjoyed taking a last look at our fall flower garden here at the Cottage farmstead before the first hard frost takes it all away for the year. It's been nice having a little bit of a delay to the hard frost to enjoy more of the colors out here, especially when we have some more cloud-covered days. All the flowers just glow with that diffused light. But it's about time for the flower garden to go to sleep and be dormant for the winter so we have some beautiful spring blossoms come next year. Well, hope you had a great growing season in your vegetable and your flower gardens. And with that, we'll catch you next time.